Welcome to Discussions with the Writer Fred, right here in San Antonio on Black Video News. Lately, we've been hearing a lot of talk about blacks in the Democratic Party and how we'd be better off in the Republican Party. And good old Trump went to Atlanta last week and met with a group of blacks who were hollering 4 more years, and then someone had the nerve to holler 8 more years. And it all stems from his speech he made when he was running for office, when he used the term, when he talked about everything negative in the black community. Kids are going to jail, boom, boom, boom. What the hell do you have to lose? Mm-hmm. And evidently these folks have bought that. And there is it's called Blexit. Black exit from the Democratic Party. It's being led by this young girl, Candace Owens. And they're claiming that the Democratic Party has not done anything for black people in over 50 years. They're going on and on and on and on. So I decided to take a little time on my show and discuss that. And I've invited one of my favorite guests all the time, very smart, knowledgeable, and beautiful, Dr. Sharon Michael Chadwell. We invited a Republican who hasn't shown. She called and said she was running late, and maybe she is, but she's not here. And I'm on a time schedule here at Black Video News, and I had to go on and do this show. So, Sharon, you and I will do it.
Amen.
Okay. Let's start off by revisiting Trump's claim that the Democrats have never done anything for black people, and you got crime, you got drugs, you got unemployment, and what the hell do you have to lose? Come with me, go over to Trump. And let's not just make it about Trump, let's make it about the Republican Party and this outreach. I can't believe the outrage is being led by Trump, but it is. But this outreach to try to bring blacks out of the Democratic Party into the Republican Party. What's that all about?
Well, when you called me and asked me to do this show with you, one of the things that I think is evident on both sides, both the Democrats and the Republicans, is this need to try to capture the black vote. And because of this need, you're hearing all kind of narratives coming on both sides, and in fact, in some cases, very disappointing on both sides as to what they can do for the black community, although Kamala Harris said she wasn't going to do anything for blacks.
Separately.
Yeah. So when this whole question of, you pose a question, what political party best serves the interests of black America? And the question really is, are we talking specifically for black Americans, or are we talking about black Americans and everybody else?
Well, that's the issue. Can we isolate like that? Is it possible? And I know Dr. West made that an issue with Obama when he said, well, Obama said, I can't isolate like that. And Dr. West said, well, you did for the LGBTQ community. Mm-hmm. Oh, no, he did for the women. The Ledbetter Act was specifically for women. Mm-hmm. And so, but I think it is a legitimate question. Can you really just isolate and say, well, I'm writing this legislation for black community?
So I think what we have to look at is in terms of access to resources. Do we have fair access to economic resources? Can we get the funding that we need to establish and maintain our communities? We're seeing where other groups, it appears, now, not that I've talked to everybody, these other groups like the Asian community, the Hispanic community, to where it looks like they have more access to funding to establish and maintain their communities. And then when blacks try to go for the same funding, there may be some challenges that may be hindering them from doing so. I remember when we first moved to San Antonio back in the 60s, and we used to live on the south side of San Antonio, mm-hmm. which is predominantly Hispanic, close to the military base that my father was stationed. And on Saturdays, we would go to the black side of town. So the black side of San Antonio was very, very evident. You saw black folks coming in and out of doors. You saw streets on East Houston. There were shops on East Houston Street that were black owned businesses. You saw, aside from the churches, you saw black owned businesses and communities that have black people in it. So the question now becomes, what is the black community? Where is it located? We have vestiges on the east side of the black community, but it doesn't represent what I remember as a child growing up in San Antonio as to where the black community is. So if you look at the black community that they're talking about, who all is getting funding to set a business where we have the Asians setting up shop on this side of town. You've got Arabs setting up shop on this side of town. Are blacks getting fair access to funds to sustain their own communities?
Does that have anything to do with the Democratic Party?
It becomes a question of what policies are being legislated to where blacks have the same access or perception of equal access to these same resources.
Well, let's follow that thinking for a minute. They blame mayors
Okay.
and city councils. They say, well, you have all these black mayors and they're not doing anything and they're getting all this money. But is that true? Where is that money coming from? Probably coming from the state.
Mm-hmm.
So that changes the whole scenario here,
Okay.
because states are not run by black mayors or black governors. They're basically run by white governors. And right now we know the majority of the states are in Republican hands, right? And the national government right now is under the control of a white Republican.
So we're talking about that. Then let's just roll it back. When Texas was under the leadership of Ann Richards, when she was governor,
92.
92,
Uh-huh.
I would say that maybe we did see more economic growth in black communities. As an argument, you still saw the black community. You know where to go to the black community. But now this black community is almost to where you can't make that full distinction anymore other than the churches. The churches are representative of the old black community.
And a lot of the people that go to the churches don't even
live
the
on
community.
the side of town. So
They drive back into the community to
so
go to the
it
church.
becomes what policies or what practices are being done to allow black Americans access to funds needed to start their own businesses and sustain their communities. But in San Antonio or other communities, then that black community is almost, where is it?
Well, let's talk about those funds to create a black business community. I worked for a Democrat,
Okay.
Congressman Perrin Mitchell.
Right.
In fact, he was there before Elijah Cummings. Elijah Cummings got his district where he retired. Perrin was a black Democrat. He was the chair of the House Small Business Committee. His big push, he created in legislation the 8A program.
Okay.
The 8A program was simply where blacks could get, black businesses, if they qualified, could get set-aside contracts.
Okay.
Perrin used to tell us all the time, the government is our Wall Street if we work this right. And I would maintain today that Perrin has made more black millionaires than any one other person in this country because they used to get the set-aside contracts. And I would know because I would go with him to visit some of these businesses. That all started to fall apart when Reagan,
Okay.
Republican president, comes along and doesn't put that much emphasis on the program.
So the set-aside programs were set aside.
Set aside, yeah. And so this is a case where the Democrat was pushing for these programs for black businesses, and the Republican over here was trying to tear it down. So this idea that Democrats don't do anything or haven't tried to do anything to help build the black community, it's just not true. And I'm living proof of that because I worked with these business folks for years. Then the gentleman I worked for on the Senate side, Senator Birch Bayh, in a conservative state like Indiana, he was a Democrat, and he supported all these programs.
Okay. So it's a matter of optics now. We've got a lot of new media influencers who are seeing things differently, to where their whole argument, and these are millennials and early stage baby boomers,
They just don't know.
where they're
I don't want to run the age thing.
no. The reason I'm looking at a particular group, to where it's a matter of optics, is where they're seeing that a lot of these other groups, Asians, Native Americans, whites, Hispanics, and even LGBTQ community, they're getting reparations to go back into their communities to set up whatever businesses or housing that they needed. And so now you got these new media influencers who are pushing for reparations, because they're saying that for us to get reimbursed for the damages done to the Black community, i.e., Black Wall Street, it says no one has really been, from what they can see, have been reparations. You can receive reparations for the damages that was posed on Black Wall Street and other Black communities that were destroyed based on racism. But you've got Native Americans who are receiving some forms of reparation for their communities. You've got Asians receiving reparations for whatever happened in World War II. You've got whites who have been receiving reparations from losing slaves, and maybe, I don't know how long that has gone. And so it's a matter of optics. We're saying that, again, all these other groups have gotten money, and they have been able to build and rebuild communities, and that the Black community have not gained access to those funds to rebuild and strengthen their communities.
And let's talk about a Black Wall Street.
Mm-hmm. I knew you were going to say something about that.
Yeah, definitely. when Charles Ogletree and my frat brother, Demario Solomon Simmons, who's an attorney in Tulsa, pushed for reparations, the only thing they could get from the state was to build a cultural center instead of giving reparations to the families. And guess what party?
It was for Republican.
Republican. Hey, Candace Owens out there. It was Republicans. Hey, Gigi Hughes out there. It was Republicans that blocked it. And so, as this fight, we're going to see reparations come up again. And let's watch closely who supports it and who doesn't support it. And I would be willing to bet that you'll have more Democrats supporting it.
Well,
than
what's happening is that you're seeing this whole topic of reparations, and now people are trying to piggyback on the discussion. Well, if it's reparations for Black Americans and this other group here, we need reparations. I think we need reparations as well. We need reparations for Puerto Ricans. We need reparations for this. So the black media influencers are saying, no, we're looking at strictly reparations for foundational Black Americans. We have no concern over what the Puerto Ricans want, what the gays want, the LGBTQ want. It's strictly for foundational Black Americans. So the Haitians are saying, well, I was a slave. No, we talk about foundational Black Americans. So it's just a real, the whole, again, it's a matter of optics now as to how this new group of folks are really looking at how the discussion is even being held. And so if you look at some of the debates where reparations was discussed, it was globalized to where they were trying to make it more inclusive of other groups. So again, so the interest of the Black community in relation to reparations seems to be watered down when they're trying to enter other groups into the reparations discussion as well.
And that happened also in the 70s when we were pushing for set-asides for minorities.
Right.
Well, the Republican Party pushed for white women to be minority. And we had to compromise and put them in there. And so, what they would do, their husbands that has these big businesses where they have to do a percentage with minorities, they'd set the wife up as a minority and she'd get the business. And so it's the same thing.
So,
And this is coming. My boss, who happened to be a Democrat, and the Congressional Black Caucus happened to be black, but they were Democrats, fought against that. So this idea that the Democrats don't try to do anything to help blacks, it's just not true. I'm sorry, it's just not true.
what I would really love to get in the discussion is to bring in the 3 top Democratic candidates and really, and the reason I'm saying, and really go into a deep discussion with him as to what could you do or would you do to help the black community, specifically the black community. We know we don't want to talk about anybody else. We're talking specifically the black community because I don't think their feet has really been held to the fire on that one as much as I would like. Now, of course, now Trump is already, has little dog whistles out, and he's already piggybacking on what he could do. And admittedly, he's done some things, but he said he's given.
What has he done?
He said he has given.
What has he done?
He said he has given the HBCUs more money than Obama. Well, yeah, you should because we're later down the timeline in terms of what you can and cannot do. But we already know that he's only doing things as a reaction versus sincerity behind those actions.
But that's good. But their argument is inner cities. Okay, HBCUs are not inner cities. What is he doing for the inner cities?
And that was the other thing. We got into the discussion with a certain Republican when I was asked, "Well, has Obama been to Atlanta?" Well, where Trump had that rally, it was like 8 miles from Buckhead.
I know. It was not in the inner city.
It was not an inner city. Obama has been to Atlanta 12 times, but that's nonetheless, if you really want to get your hands dirty, then you need to be seen in those areas. Both Democrats and Republicans have to be in those areas. And so I really would like to talk again to those top 3 Democratic candidates to really find out, okay, you want the black vote. There are certain things you're hearing that we want. How would you address that?
Well, let's take that up when we come back from our break. Okay. We'll be right back with you right here
on November 25th. Black Book Studios presents Art and Soul 5, featuring legendary jazz artist Ronnie Laws.
Have you ever looked in a face of age?
Lonnie Liston Smith. Gene Carr. And Norman Connors and the Starship Orchestra.
You are my life.
Downtown, Lila Cockrell Theater. With special guests, visual artists from the San Antonio Ethnic Art Society.
Any way you want.
Art and Soul 5. November 25th.
1, 6, or a dozen trees. No job is too big or too small. Booker's Tree Services is a certified arborist and state licensed company. On the ground or in the air, we are here to take care of all your tree needs, from stump grinding, tree pruning, tree trimming, tree removal, and much more. Call the professionals to help manage your commercial or residential needs. Don't let your trees make you nervous. Call for a free estimate today at Booker Tree Service, 210-657-8085.
40% of food in America is never eaten.
1 in 6 seniors faces the threat of hunger, and millions more live in isolation.
America, let's do lunch.
Drop off a hot meal and say a quick hello. Volunteer for Meals on Wheels by donating your lunch break at americaletsdolunch.org.
Marie, you have prediabetes.
Prediabetes? I don't have time to eat right or exercise. I'm a busy mom.
Oh, you're a busy mom.
Yeah.
This is great news. Busy moms never get prediabetes.
Wait, what?
Let me just... Yeah, this is all the people at risk for prediabetes, and way over here, busy moms. No?
Hello, I'm Tony Hendricks, Chief Operating Officer at Lewis Funeral Home. Lewis Funeral Home has been serving San Antonio and surrounding areas for over 100 years. Lewis Funeral Home's ultimate goal is to help those families in their time of need. If your family is ever in need, please feel free to call us at Lewis Funeral Home, 210-227-7281, or check us out on our website at lewisfuneralhome.com.
Nothing to do this week? Don't miss another event. Go to blacksinsanantonio.com for our event calendar. The home of the largest business directory in San Antonio with an African American focus. Sign up today for our weekly e-blast and text message alerts. Help us make this a better community. Connect, empower, grow.
Welcome back to Discussions with the Writer Fred, right here at Black Video News in rainy San Antonio.
Cold.
Cold. Yeah, cold in San Antonio.
Cold and wet.
Don't believe the stories about San Antonio doesn't get cold, because it's cold right now in San Antonio. Anyway, let's get back to, well, before we get back to our discussions, why don't you tell our viewers about some of the things you're doing?
All right, well, I am an online instructor. I work for several universities, mostly doctoral students, and I also teach marketing here in San Antonio. And aside from the educational piece, I am a triathlete. Next year, I'll be doing what I call a trifecta, doing 3 half Ironman. One of them will be in Mexico with the goal of going to New Zealand next year.
Wow. Well, you stay busy, don't you?
Stay busy. Training is a beast.
And you also have a book coming out pretty soon,
Got a
don't
book
you?
coming out hopefully next August. I've got 17 authors from across the United States,
Okay.
educators and stakeholders who are interested in improving the educational experiences for Black learners.
Oh, great. We're going to have a show on that.
Yes, we will.
When we get close to it.
Yes, we
Okay.
will autograph it for you.
Okay. All right. Let's get back to our subject here. People say the Democratic Party only comes around every 4 years. Whose fault is that?
Okay, so I think there's some truth to, I think for the larger community, I think there's some truth in that given that they want our vote. We also see
But
Republicans.
isn't that normal?
But we also see Republicans come to us as well because they want our vote.
Right.
So the question goes back to the original question that you posed earlier: is which party best meets the needs of the Black community?
Right.
Okay. So historically, if you look at how this all came apart, historically, the Republicans back in the day post Civil War days, they did do some things to where they were trying to get rid of slavery, and then there were some Democrats who were trying to maintain the process, and they used a lot of propaganda to move the black vote into the direction. Now that was back then. We're still seeing evidences where that same argument is probably going on nowadays, but again, which political group seems to be more of the champion of Black Americans? And I'm a Democrat. There are some Republicans that I would vote for also if there's any way I could split the ticket when I go vote. So because I feel there are some good Republicans, but I think collectively, more recently, that there's been legislation pushed by Democrats that support the needs of Black Americans. But the argument again goes back to specific legislation that targets the needs of Black Americans. And the only one I can think of would probably be the civil rights legislation.
The voter rights bill.
The voters' rights bill, but this whole discussion is specifically to meet the needs of Black Americans. Now, President Obama came out and he says, I'm the president of all the people, not just Black people. And there was legitimacy in what he was saying on that argument as well. But he did do some things that may not have got the media attention that it deserved to support Black Americans. And, but it was not the overarching, this is only for Black Americans type of legislation that many, I believe, want to see. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but how could you do that? How are you going to? The Civil Rights Bill addressed
many of the issues,
and was directed probably at segregation in the South. Mm-hmm. But in the long run, it affected more than just Black people. It took into all minorities that were being oppressed. And the Voting Rights Bill probably was more directed at Black people.
Okay.
The Fair Housing Bill, but this all came under what kind of president? Lyndon Johnson, a Democratic president. Mm-hmm. And then Reagan comes along and he tries to, keep in mind, Reagan's initial speech was held in Philadelphia, Mississippi. What's it known for? That's where the 3 civil rights folks were murdered. Okay. And remember, Reagan starts his whole states' rights movement.
Right.
Give it back to the states. Well, that was just code for I'm going to get rid of all these civil rights bills.
And we're seeing Trump doing the same thing to where he's going to let the states handle their own business.
Exactly, yeah. Which is a way of saying give it back to the states and let them do what they did 50 years ago. So I don't understand this discussion about. To me, there's no comparison. I'm sorry, there's just no comparison between Republican Party and the Democratic Party.
Again, I think now we got a whole new generation of media influencers who are Black, who are looking strictly at optics at this point. And they want to see legislation passed specifically for Black people.
Well, what is it? What's it going to be? What's it going to look like?
And so I haven't, the Black agenda has been released, and there are pieces of it to where it becomes, there's some good points on there, but they still want to see more money coming into the Black community via the reparations piece. So this is where this argument comes into now. Which political party is really going to be the champion
of reparations
of the Black agenda? That's really the question. Which political party will be the champion?
What is the Black agenda? Is it reparations?
Reparations is part of it.
What else is the Black agenda? Separate and apart from every other group in this country, what would be a Black agenda? We're only specifically aimed at Black people.
Well, they're
talking reparations.
Mostly it's reparations. Mostly it's improving educational systems to improve the educational experience of Black youth. But again, it's more economic. It's an economic piece in there that this new generation of media influencers are pushing.
Well,
it's money. Everything centers on money.
Okay, we discussed that in the first part.
We do.
Let's talk about education. What party of the two parties is going to do most to try to improve education, quality of education in the black community? Let's take Texas.
Okay.
The Texas Education Association are all right-wing conservatives.
Mm-hmm.
There was just a debate recently about teaching black history.
Right.
And they shot it down.
Right.
So would being able to teach black history in schools where black kids go, would that be a positive? Certainly it would be a positive. Heck, we're sick of reading about our heroes being George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, and they owned slaves. Well, what about showing Nat Turner?
Well, one of the things about the school system, and we're kind of going into this is dovetailing all different directions. I looked at a particular school district here in San Antonio because of an issue that came up. And at this particular school district, looking only at the elementary schools, there were 78 elementary schools, okay? Less than 50% of those schools had less than 2 to 3 teachers, black teachers. So
50% of the schools?
Less than
50%.
Less than 50% of the schools, more than 50, less than 50% of the schools had 3 to 1, even maybe 1 to 2 or 3 black teachers. Some had 5, but for the most part, it was running like 2 to 3.
And these schools were located
here in San Antonio.
But in what school district?
I'm not going to say the school district.
Okay.
But it's a major school district here in San Antonio. Of those schools, you had you have a pretty good black population of African American learners. So now we've got a system in place to where if we're going to look at the black agenda, then we need to also look at putting teachers who look like you and me, maybe younger, in those schools and as administrators so that they can be more of a champion, if you will, again, to ensure that these kids get representation that looks like them to teach them as well. And the other thing is, a lot of white kids do not know how to deal, probably as adults, deal with black leaders because they had never had a black teacher or administrator on the campus. So when they go into the professional field and there is a black leader like myself trying to run shop, then there may be challenges because they have never had those experiences. So it all starts, up to me, if you're going to look at it, starts in the school systems. What are we doing to ensure that we're getting the teachers needed to represent the community teaching these kids?
What party do you think would be more inclined to
Democrat?
The Democratic Party, no doubt.
Democrat.
Who's this lady they got now? She's trying to dismantle everything in public schools. She's a Republican. So again, to you Republicans out there, and I'll invite any one of you to come on this show and prove me wrong and prove Dr. Shadwell wrong, if you can. I will imagine we won't hear from you at all, but you're welcome to come on here and make that argument with us. How about crime? Can you blame crime on any one particular party?
The crime issue, and let's just go ahead and say the Republicans always want to bring up Chicago.
Yes.
Okay, they always want to bring up Chicago. They want to talk about D.C. also. They may even talk about Atlanta, but not as much as they want to talk about Chicago. So how did Chicago become such a major centerpiece in that discussion? Now, I have my theories that I think it was manufactured. I think a lot of it was manufactured because we're seeing incidences where they're seeing young white males who are blackface going into the inner city of Chicago, causing all kind of confusion.
Wait, now that's a whole together different gut. Are you saying?
Yes, I did say it. So
whites are putting on blackface
going into the inner city
and doing the shootings.
doing shootings. So of course you see this quote unquote black image, right, with a gun, and of course the media comes back and say black on black crime. So I think these are some of our little good old Republican boys, getting happy on a Saturday night saying let's go ahead and do blackface and let's go shoot up some folks.
That's pretty heavy accusation, Dr. Shadwell.
Well, it is what it is. It is what it is. And it just has been evidence
of that?
Of that. So I believe that if you go back to the world, about the whole drug issues up in New York, a lot of it was dropped into the black community to destroy the black community.
I believe that,
Who's to say it did not happen in Chicago as well? I think a lot of stuff was purposely dropped into those communities to disseminate, to destroy those communities. And so, again, it's a matter of optics. But I think as a community, we need to take some ownership now and regain our communities.
Take back control
take back control of the community.
And it has nothing to do with a political party.
Right.
It just has to do with our responsibility
to take back our communities.
To take back our communities, yeah. It's ridiculous that young kids are running our communities the way they do.
Right. So I think, we need to, I enjoy the idea that these young media influencers are trying to educate, but we need to take back our communities.
Well, as a sister to sister, what would be your advice to this Candace Owens? Because she's going around here talking about she was never discriminated against, and slavery wasn't bad. And how would you advise her?
You cannot put everybody back on the boat. Candace, we may have lost someone. So
beyond redemption?
Beyond redemption. So let her move on. We've got enough people collectively in the black community that can pull it together if they wanted to pull it together.
So what you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, is we don't need to concentrate on her. We need to concentrate on making sure that her word is not effective in our community.
Right.
That's what we need to do. And I hope all of you out there watching this show hear that. We have to stop this because we know, those of us who have been around a while, and those that haven't, know that Donald Trump is not the best answer for the black community.
Right.
He talks about, and I'm so sick and tired of every time one of those folks, they talk about black unemployment. What they don't take into consideration, and you probably know this better than I do, people drop out. They don't report. You only know unemployment by the people who apply for unemployment. Mm-hmm. If they're not applying for unemployment, then you don't know they're unemployed. So it looks like you're doing a great job, number one. Number two, I would like some of these folks to tell us, all these people, black folks get these jobs, are they minimum wage or what are they? Are they quality of life jobs or what are they? They don't talk about that. Mm-mm. So I get started on this, I can go on and on. I guess because I have been a dedicated, like you, Democrat, worked for two beautiful, great Democratic congressmen, a United States Senator, one white, and a congressman from Baltimore, one black. And I can say I worked the best on the Senate side and on the House side. And I am not going to stand still and allow this to happen. Sharon, you want to wrap up with a couple words to our viewers?
We have a lot to work on as a black community members. And if we're serious, we can do this. We have to show them. We need to quit talking about it and do something about it.
Okay. I want to thank you, as usual, for being on my show.
You're welcome.
You're always good and you're always beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
And I'd like to say to my viewers, let's not fall for this con game. Trump is the biggest con artist in the country. And just because he conned his people, don't let him con our people. Please, let's stand up, speak out, and stop this. And this is Fred Williams, Discussion with the Writer Fred, telling our story, our way.